Whitebeard lives, technically, in all of our hearts, because we can never forget how amazing he was. But imagine what it would be like if I made that claim and it were true. Imagine a world where at Marineford, Whitebeard did not perish, and instead he thrived. Let's do a little thought experiment, shall we? And see where this road leads us. It's a road without a log post, so it'll be very windy and unpredictable. It could take us anywhere, but at least we're in it together. So the exact moment where the story of Whitebeard deviates from the main canon is when Blackbeard is about to shoot Whitebeard. You know that moment, the pivotal one. The one right before Whitebeard is about to be bombarded by a barrage of bullets from Blackbeard's crew. Imagine at that moment of truth that Whitebeard noticed something shiny on the ground before his feet. He noticed a penny. And of course, pennies don't exist in this universe. Normally people pay with berries, so Whitebeard is super curious. He bends down and he's like, ooh, what is this? And in doing so, all of the bullets miss him. This gives Whitebeard just enough time to be rescued by his trusted surrogate son, Marco the Phoenix, who whisks Whitebeard away from Marineford. And as Marco saves Whitebeard, the rest of the pirates end up retreating, essentially meaning that all the other outcomes of Marineford are the same, except for the fates of Blackbeard and Whitebeard. Resultantly, the world power balance will remain pretty unchanged moving forward because the Whitebeard Pirates wouldn't disband and Blackbeard wouldn't have the Tremor fruit. Instead, Blackbeard will spend every waking moment scheming to take down Whitebeard. But he will continue to fail every time he crafts up a scheme. It's just not going to go well, leading to Blackbeard basically becoming Whitebeard's own Team Rocket. Every once in a while, Blackbeard will rock up, cause some trouble, Whitebeard will smack him around, and then Blackbeard's blasting off yet again. And generally, a lot of the events of the main story aren't really going to change until we start getting into the Four Emperors saga. The Straw Hats will still do everything they did, and Whitebeard is just going to be off in his own corner of the world doing his own thing. That is until Whitebeard finds that he has a reason to intervene in world events. The first time that he'll really have a reason to intervene will be when Luffy stirs up trouble on Whole Cake Island. This is because when Whitebeard learns of the danger that Luffy is in, he'll want to intervene. This is important to Whitebeard because when he was younger, he had this bond with Roger, and ultimately Roger ended up being executed after being sick. And some part of him deep inside wants to protect this child that feels like the embodiment of the carried over will of Roger, and the will of Portgas D Ace, who is genuinely another surrogate son for Whitebeard that he truly loved. Plus, Whitebeard did show that he cared about the survival of Luffy for reasons outside of himself. When he ordered members of his crew to protect Luffy during Marineford, he saw the potential in Luffy with Conqueror's Haki and all of that, and he recognized that this is a young man that could lead the next generation forward into the future. So he's really in a position where he'd want to step in if Luffy is ever truly in danger, and being knee-deep in Big Mom's kingdom and antagonizing her is a pretty dangerous situation to be in. The lady's scary. So Whitebeard decides to go to Big Mom's territory to talk things out and hopefully de-escalate the situation. He'd opt for this route over fighting because he has a history with Big Mom, you know? They used to be in the Rocks Pirates together, and they have this long storied history. I mean, maybe there's something there. But by the time he arrives on Whole Cake Island, it's a little too late. Big Mom is already in the midst of her hunger pangs and rampaging through Whole Cake Chateau. Whitebeard attempts to stop her with a single punch just to save all of the innocent people and members of Big Mom's crew that are being hurt, because Whitebeard is ultimately, at the end of the day, a very kind person. He successfully knocks her out with one punch. However, unfortunately for Big Mom, she is knocked out so long that her body starts to wither away because she needs constant food. And all the members of Big Mom's family are too afraid to get anywhere near her mouth and try to feed her food. They know how it'd be. They're not risking their lives like that. So eventually, Big Mom withers and passes. This happens pretty quickly because, as we see during Whole Cake Island, Big Mom shriveled pretty quickly without having food constantly because her body just burns so much energy. Whitebeard, feeling kind of awkward about this and also sort of guilty, starts talking to the members of Big Mom's family to see what's up. Like, what are they going to do with the future? How could he help? And as he's talking to them, he kind of gets sidetracked and loses sight of the main reason he was there to help out Luffy. In fact, this entire time, he hasn't even encountered Luffy or any of the Straw Hats. But by the time he settles affairs with Big Mom down pirates and helps appoint Charlotte Katakuri to lead the crew moving forward, Luffy is nowhere to be seen. So Whitebeard is scratching his head and asks around, only to be informed by Charlotte Pudding that Luffy had left for Wano, so that he could take down Kaido, King of the Beasts. Whitebeard gasps when he hears this, because he's going to get in over his head yet again. It's sort of like loss aversion at this point for Whitebeard, if you think about it. He's invested in saving Luffy at Marineford. He's invested in saving Luffy at Whole Cake Island. It feels like sort of a waste if Luffy just goes and dies against Kaido. If Luffy were going anywhere else in the world, Whitebeard would not want to interfere, but he just knows Luffy wouldn't really be able to stand up to an emperor, and he's kind of concerned for what will happen to Luffy and what will happen to the future of the world if Luffy dies too soon. So Whitebeard promptly sets sail with his crew to the land of Wano, hoping to get to Luffy before anything too drastic happens. Unfortunately, when Whitebeard is about halfway to Wano, he notices a strange marine ship approaching in the distance. As it gets closer, he notices that it's followed by dozens of other marine ships. He readies himself as he tries to understand what's happening. On the marine's flagship stands a single admiral, Admiral Greenbull. Greenbull is here to prove himself against an emperor of the sea. Due to the events at Whole Cake Island, he knew that Whitebeard was on the move and thought he'd be kind of vulnerable being out in the open. Greenbull is super confident. He really thinks he could fight an emperor, and honestly, he kind of thinks that a lot of the legends and whatnot about Whitebeard are kind of made up. He's really just a frail old man now on top of it as well. Like, he's heard the legend about Whitebeard not having any coward's wounds on his back, and he just shrugs it off, thinking like, yeah, right, that's why Whitebeard wears a cape, so he could hide all the coward's wounds that he's accrued. Unfortunately for Greenbull, he is wrong. He is oh so wrong. Whitebeard uses his Tremor fruit and completely obliterates the marine fleet, including Greenbull. It happens so darn fast. Unfortunately for Whitebeard, he got kind of distracted while this was happening, and as his own ship, the Moby Dick, was rocking back and forth while he was using his fruit, the penny that he picked up earlier at Marineford kind of just slipped out of his pockets and fell off the ship into the water. It's rather tragic if you think about it, kind of like the tale of Darth Plagueis the Wise for all my Star Wars peeps out there. If you haven't heard of it, don't worry, it's not a story the Jedi would tell you. But anywho, eventually Whitebeard gets to Wano, but due to the delay caused by Greenbull and that whole coinky-dink, Whitebeard arrives when the raid on Onigashima is already initiated. It might seem like Whitebeard took a lot longer to get here than it should have with all things considered, but he made all of his non-devil fruit using crew members scour the ocean floor for that penny for days before he would continue his journey to the land of samurai. Alas, no penny was found, but weirdly enough, he found Jack down there. So with his arrival on Wano being delayed, he started kind of freaking out when he realized what was happening. The one thing he wanted to stop was a direct conflict with Kaido. But fortunately, the Ninja Pirate Mink Samurai Alliance would win this fight pretty darn easily when compared to the original series. Think about it, right? There's no Big Mom, there's no Paris Pero, and just those two factors alone are game changers. That fight against Kaido the entire time is gonna be Luffy, Kid, Killer, and Trafalgar Law. They're gonna win the fight without Luffy even awakening his devil fruit, which has so many implications moving forward, by the way. But Whitebeard doesn't know this. He's kind of panicking as he's going as fast as he can to get to Onigashima and find Kaido and just stop this to save Luffy. But by the time he and his crew get to the rooftop, they find that Kaido is already defeated. Whitebeard has a sigh of relief. Afterwards, he approaches Luffy and scolds him. Luffy is naturally as defiant as he would ever be, but despite all of it, Whitebeard feels kind of happy. He realizes that now with only 2 emperors remaining, Luffy probably isn't going to be fighting another emperor anytime soon. Plus, Luffy has demonstrated now that he's grown into somebody who could actually deal with an emperor if he has the appropriate support, and this relieves Whitebeard. Whitebeard can finally relax for a bit, knowing that Luffy isn't going to battle Shanks due to their relationship, and that he's not going to battle Whitebeard either, because why would he? Luffy's goal is to become king of the pirates, and you don't really have to destroy an emperor of the sea to become king of the pirates, especially one that's already your friend. So Whitebeard sets sail from Wano with not a care in the world. And just as the Moby Dick is leaving the waters surrounding Wano, a news coup flies over the ship. It drops a newspaper right on the floor in front of Whitebeard. Whitebeard, feeling nostalgic for the time he bent down to pick up that penny, bends down and picks up the newspaper. He reads the headline story and is absolutely shocked. The story informs that both Big Mom and Kaido have been recently defeated. And what's more, the Whitebeard Pirates had been spotted in both locations around the time of each emperor's defeat. So the newspaper claims that obviously Whitebeard had been the one to defeat the other 2 emperors because who else would be strong enough to do so? And having conquered the territory of 2 entire emperors of the sea in such a a short period of the time displays something that hasn't been seen in decades. It displays that someone out there is worthy of the title Pirate King, even without having to go to Laugh Tale and find the One Piece. And so, the story anoints Edward Newgate as the new King of the Pirates, courtesy of Big News Morgans. Whitebeard chuckles as he reads the story, thinking about how ironic it is, both from the perspective of thinking about Roger and thinking about Luffy. He then doesn't really pay much more mind to the story throughout the rest of the day. Eventually, when it gets to nighttime, he retires to his quarters and lays in his bed, with not a care in the world. And moments before he drifts off to sleep, he starts to sweat and his eyes shoot wide open. He realized something. How could he have been so naive before? It didn't occur to him until now. What this means. He's now King of the Pirates. Then, in the shadowy corner of his room, he hears a noise. It is the last noise he ever hears. It goes... And that, my dear friend, concludes the story of Edward Newgate, otherwise known as Whitebeard. Let me know in the comments down below if you can think of any cool one-liners that Luffy could say from the shadows of Whitebeard's room. There are a lot of creative and funny one-liners out there, so please help a homie out. And with that, DuckPiece out.